Thank you everyone for tuning in. My name is Jingzhi, a third-year MLA student at the University of Michigan. Today, I wanted to take you along the journey to envision a resilient, inviting, and inclusive future community in Detroit and witness the transition from a disinvested community to a sustainable hub around the region. The project is staged as a catalyst for future development in 50 years. The site we're focusing on is Jefferson Chalmers, which sits at the southeast boundary of Detroit. Geographically abutting a wealthy suburb called Grosse Pointe Park across the Fox Canal, there is a salient barrier between the two communities, both physically and psychologically, that accounts for the social segregation and the violent events that has happened time after time at the border area. The goals here are, first and foremost, to address the severe flooding issue happening in Detroit by forming a healthy water cycle with ecological interventions. Secondly, to break community barriers and form an equitable, inclusive, and inviting community by reinforcing connections and injecting social interaction programs. Last but not least, the design aims to maintain a self-sustaining and continuously growing community in the long run. The maps on the right indicate the significant land cover transition from marsh to impervious pavement spanning from 1800 circa till the 21st century. Detroit is a typical post-industrial or Rust Belt city in southeast Michigan. Being located in the Great Lakes region, it was endowed with the opportunity to be a commerce and global trade center in the 19th century. As the city continued prospering, it used to function as a stronghold amidst canals and waterways. By 1890, the city was renowned as stove capital of the world, leading to establishment of a series of world-famous industries. The boom of population and industrialization grew the city outward and brought in jobs and money into the city. However, as the market started to decline, population has been continually declining in the city while leaving legacies of underlying environmental issues behind. The stark disparity between the two communities in terms of socioeconomic components, violent crime rate, redlining, and real estate stability has explained the long-term discordance and friction between the communities. Let's zoom into the community border of Jefferson Chalmers and Grosse Pointe Park, and there are several opportunities in terms of connections and landscape amelioration. First of all, there are physical barriers between community such as fence or wood palisade. Secondly, there are very few connections between the two communities, and there is a great potential to improve the circulation and public transit system. Taking a look at the Fox Creek along the border, the riverbank is hardened and currently not ecologically functional. Access to waterfront is also restricted due to poor connectivity. There is massive vacant land and great potential to input social programs to improve usability. Site temperature analysis would help us make decisions in later phases. Looking at land use, there are a few underutilized key patches in the neighborhood, and it indicates the area is promising to be utilized as public green space and form an ecologically habitat loop for wildlife. Stormwater infrastructure is relatively sparse, which indicates a potential to inject more stormwater installations. According to demographic information, the city is mostly composed of young and mid-aged population. Mostly commute by cars, so there is opportunity to increase walkability in the neighborhood. To restore the resiliency in the city, the design is driven by a series of key drivers that takes ecological, social, and economical aspects into consideration. The proposal is conducted through both physical and temporal hierarchy. Physically, the process goes from removing barrier to open up and finally activate the space. Meanwhile, the goals are also achieved in a timely order. from eliminating threats inherited from the past, building on current existing assets, and then finally keeping it sustained for future benefits. Each concern is addressed with a set of prototypes. For example, ecological strategies are designed to address flooding, urban heat island, food security, habitat loss, as well as carbon sequestration. Socially, landscape fragmentation issue will be mitigated through landscape amelioration, vacant lot activation, as well as tying the place with its rich cultural and historical components in the neighborhood. To reboom its ecological prosperity, the design will diversify local economic structure by bringing in business incubation opportunities, enrich urban agriculture legacy, and bringing bus rapid transit system into the community. However, I do realize that revitalization might give rise to further concerns in cities like Detroit, such as gentrification, and that is also taken into consideration. The graph below is an illustration of livability, affordability, resilience, and attractability are intertwined, and it can be mitigated through strategic incentives and reciprocal support. To achieve an equitable and inviting community in the long run, the project is divided into phases spanning from 10, 20, 50 years master plan. In the short term, the focus is restoring soil condition through increasing species diversity, recovering waterfront habitat, reinforcing connectivity, and activating community open space. The diverse and multipurpose readaptation of land is morphing the community from vacant into functional. And these inchoate adaptation strategies open up the area to other possibilities to be developed in the long run. The history of Detroit farms stretches back to the late 19th century. Thus, in the second phase, we wanted to echo its historical legacy and expand urban agriculture in various forms as a pioneer approach to restore local connections to their cultural capital. Also bringing in greenway as a method to move toward carbon neutral and streetscape amelioration. In 50 years, the goal is to amplify and readopt the functional strategies in earlier phases to a larger extent. Mariner Park is one of the key patches in the neighborhood. It's promising in terms of community engagement and ecological restoration, and it helps bring in people to the waterfront. Community gathering spaces encourage contact and association between residents in and around the area. Skate Park, according to research, is nowadays an important venue for people, especially younger generations, to be engaged and form a sense of belonging, while representing a market of around $4 billion. Other forms of architecture, such as conference pods, stage for public events, seating area will also be implemented to provide further social functions. Closer to riverfront area, riprap revetment will be restored to protect shoreline and mitigate flooding. Dirtwood deposit forest will help retrieve a healthy woodland habitat while contributing to carbon sequestration. Stormwater will be sequestered in 4 hierarchies. Firstly, to store to adjacent bioswales or detention ponds, and it will recharge the groundwater through infiltration process and being filtered with vegetation and being reused to activate the vicinal spaces. Currently, the canal between communities have hardened riverbank along with the dormant waterfront spaces as shown in the first section, and no living habitat provided. In the first phase of transition, the physical barrier will be removed. Living shoreline is restored with diverse wetland plants, improving biodiversity, and access to public space is enforced. And in the second phase, the community border will be revamped to increase attractiveness, transforming public space to provide a platform for people from both communities to interact, thus helping bridging the cultural gap. Urban agriculture will be implemented for two primary purposes, economical and cultural. First of all, farmers are encouraged to take good advantage of local vacant land and transform them into fertile orchards, and sell local grown organic food to residents or nearby communities to spur local economic growth. They form a self-sustainable and resilient economic loop. Therefore, eliminating economic crisis in the community and move toward the goal of achieving social equity. Secondly, urban agriculture can help mitigate cultural gaps by providing opportunity for people to communicate and fully revive their local farming history and embrace cultural diversity. It will be developed in various forms with purposes of education, floodplain production, innovation, and recreation. To sum up, Detroit owes its existence and potential for development to local natural resources, local residents, and its rich and enthralling history. Possessing so many assets in the community presents the place with a promising and sanguine future as a more inclusive and reciprocal space. Thank you everyone for riding along with me on the journey to a thriving community at the border of Detroit once upon the tide.